Hello, I'm Ben Gutscher. I'm a lecturer of English for academic purposes at Duke Kunshan University. I'm also a regular Excel Esports player, and I'm going into my 5th year of competition this year. Last semester, we had our first Excel Esports course at our university. And today, what we're going to do is we are going to look at the junior varsity edition of our latest case called Lost Instructions by Peter Scharl. This is a really interesting case, a pretty interesting premise. Basically, you are given the answers from 25 competitors, and you are asked to do some certain math or find out the correct answer from the clues that were given to you. So let's go ahead and give this a try. Let's go ahead and take a look at the levels, and I'll walk you through how I would solve this case. So in level 1, we are asked to find the sum of the guesses across all 25 players. Now, one of the strategies I like to use in my competitions is I like to work out the example first. Make sure that it matches. So I'm going to copy that answer above because I want to put my formula here in that green box. And for this level, we can use a formula called sum. It works just like that. Basically, it's going to take all the numbers that we highlight, add them together, and get an answer. So I'm going to take all of the numbers from example 1 here, from players 1 through 25, add them together just like that. And now we can see that the answer we get from our formula matches the answer that they gave in the example. So I can very easily copy this and paste it across all 20 games, and we'll get all of our answers for this level. Let's take a look at level 2. For each game, find the maximum guess across all 25 players. So in level 1, we use this function called sum, and we highlighted all the cells just like that. We can actually do something very similar, but instead of sum, we are going to use a function called max that finds the maximum value. This works just the same way. I type in the word max. I'm going to highlight all of these cells right here. And that should hopefully get the same answer that we got in the example, which was 83. That's good. Let's go ahead and copy that and paste it across all 40 games there. Level 3. For each game, find the difference between the maximum and minimum guesses across all 25 players. So remember, we know how to find the maximum value. We just take equals max, and we highlight all of the cells. Just like that, get all 25 players in there. So knowing that, you could probably take a guess as to how we find the minimum value. And that's basically going to be the min function. Once again, highlight all of the cells there. And you see the way that I typed this in my formula bar, I took the maximum value, then subtract the minimum value. Now we see the maximum value. When I highlight this, I see it's going to be 75. When I highlight the minimum value, I see it's going to be 73. So that gives us a difference of 2, which is what we saw from the example. Once again, let me copy and paste this, get all the answers for level 3. Now level 4. So now we're working with a correct answer column. And the instructions for this level say score player 1's guesses by entering 1 for each game they were correct and 0 for each game they were incorrect. Now there's a couple of ways that you could go about doing this. I think the most straightforward way is to use a COUNTIF, which basically tells Excel, okay, I want you to count this cell as long as it equals the criteria, which I'm going to put as this cell. Now, the way that's going to work is that if it does match the criteria, it's going to count it. We're going to get the number 1. If it doesn't match the criteria, it's not going to count it. We're going to get a 0. So I see here the correct answer was 79. Player 1 put 81. That's the wrong answer. I should expect a 0 for this. In the example, I see that the answer is also 0. The correct answer was 12, but they put 13. That will match as well. Now, if I copy and paste through all of level 4, we should hopefully see some matches. So, for example, game number 64. We see the correct answer was 47. Player 1 put 47. That's the correct answer, so we are getting an answer of 1 in here. Let's take a look at level 5. For each game, the correct answer is listed in the correct answer column, just like we saw in the earlier level. Enter the number of players who answered the game correctly. So you saw earlier in the previous level how I used that COUNTIF function. I'm going to use the same COUNTIF function here. So instead of counting only the first player's response, now I'm going to count all 25 players' response, just like I did with the sum and the max and the min formulas earlier. So COUNTIF takes two arguments. The first is the range, that's my range, the 25 players' responses. And then the criteria is going to be the same. I want to count for that correct answer. So I'm going to click on that cell there, and that should hopefully tell us that one player did get that answer correct. Now the question is not asking me which player. I don't need to worry about that. I just need to know how many players. So let's go ahead and copy this one down through all the levels again. Now I'm going to do a quick check because we have hints now. Game 81's correct answer is between 5 and 10. I got 8. That checks out. Game 82's correct answer is between 13 and 18. I got 14. And game 83's correct answer is between 4 and 9. And once again, I got 8. So my hints are checking out. I'm feeling pretty comfortable about these answers. Another good strategy as a player, check these hints. Use these hints, especially if you're not feeling the most comfortable. Use that and see what you got. Now let's take a look at level 6. Enter the sum of the player numbers who answered the game correctly. Now, once again, there's a few different ways you can handle this level, but let me go ahead and let me just start to work over to the side. We got that empty space over to the right. I am going to copy these and I'm going to work just over to the right of our currently existing data. Now, what I want to check is does the answer meet the correct answer? If it does, give me the player number. If it doesn't, then just give me 0 or nothing. So the way that we can do that is through an if statement. Now I'm going to put it over here. Now watch very carefully as I do this. If, and the test that I want to make is, does the player's answer equal the correct answer? If it does, then give me that player's number. If it doesn't, we can just leave it blank. Now, 2 double quotes will mean a blank cell. You can also just say, give me 0. For making it visual, I think leaving a blank cell works much better. Now, what's nice about these formulas, you've seen as I've been putting my answers in, is that I can copy and paste them across. And when you do that, the formula follows with you. So you see here, now I'm working with game 81. When I went down, I just copied and pasted. It worked with the next game and so on. You see those colors that are coming up on my screen? So when I do this, I'm going to expect something similar. Now this one didn't match, so it gave me a blank cell. Let me just turn it to 0 so that you can see there's no match. And when I copy it over, now it's giving me a little bit of an odd behavior. You see here I'm getting 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. But when I look at the data, they have different numbers, 22, 23, 22, 23, 22, 23, and so on. The reason is because, like I mentioned earlier, when I copy and paste, the formulas are copying along with me. But if I go back and look at my original formula, some of these boxes, I don't want them to go with me. For example, take a look at this red box in this formula, the correct answer box. Now, when I'm copying and pasting, I'm moving my formula to the right. I don't want this to go to the right with the formula. I want it to stay in the column, in this G column. So what I can do is I can turn this into a fixed reference, an absolute reference. And on your keyboard, you can press F4, and that'll put these dollar signs in front of the number, or within the number. Now you see there are 2 dollar signs. There's one in front of this letter G, and one in front of this number 245. When you put it in front of letter G, you are telling Excel, stay in column G. Don't move from that column. Which is what we want to do here. When we move right, we don't want it to move right. But think ahead for a little bit. If I want to copy this formula down, I do want it to change rows. Now this part, putting the $sign in front of the row number, 245 refers to the row number here, that's going to make it stay on that row. And we don't want to stay on that row. So if I delete that second $sign, now that's going to say stay on G245. But if I were to go down, you can go down, you just cannot go to the right. Now watch when I do that with this formula. So you see here, G245, without fixing it, it went to H, it went to I, it went to J. But when I fix it, so I'm going to copy this now with the fixed formula. I'm going to paste it down across. Now when I look through, it's staying here at G. Going across, staying at G, going across, staying at G. That's the kind of behavior that we are expecting. Now, that's not the only cell that we want to fix. We also want to fix the player number cell, this purple box here. So if you take a look at it, first think to yourself, how can we fix that purple box so that it can go left and right, but when I paste up and down, it won't move up and down? The trick here is to once again use the $sign, but only use it to fix the row. Just put it in front of that row number there. Don't put it by the column because we want to move columns. We just don't want to move rows. Okay, so now let me copy that. Let me paste that across. Now the numbers didn't change here, but if I were to go ahead and copy this row and paste it all the way down to the end here, now you're seeing that I'm getting the cells where I've got some answers, I've got some matches, and I don't have some matches. Just to make it easier for you, let me highlight the cells with matches here. So greater than 0, I'll highlight them in yellow. So there you can see very clearly ones that are matching, ones that aren't matching. Now the instructions of this level were to say enter the sum of the player numbers who answered the game correctly. And because in this formula, I told it bring me the player number if the answer is correct, I can very easily at the end here enter once again my sum formula, highlight that entire row, and that's going to give me the sum of the player numbers who answered that question correctly. So let's check the example. I've got an answer of 90 here in this first row. The answer is also 90. So now I feel pretty comfortable with that formula. Let's do the same for the rest of the levels. Ooh, we got one with only 1. That could be concerning. But let's check our answers with the hints. And let's see if these line up. All right, so for 101, I got 40, between 30 and 45, yep. 102, I got 66, between 60 and 70. And 103, I got 39, between 30 and 40. So I feel all right with that. All right, let's go to the final level, level 7. For each game, enter the guess of the specified player number. Now I'm going to show you 2 ways you can do this one. We have the player number here instead of the correct answer. That's fine. What most people will probably go with, because it's a very nice and flexible function, is what's known as an XLOOKUP function. And so basically what this is telling us, I want to look up a number within a certain range or array, and I want you to return that corresponding position in another range or array. So if we take a look here, I want to look up player 1, and I want to look at that player 1 in these player numbers. Now remember, we get, these are the headings. We got to keep our headings in that row where they are. So I'm going to put my $signs here by the row numbers so the row numbers don't change. And when we return, we want to return this row of answers here. Not sure why that's highlighting 2 rows. That should be 282. There we go. Now that row can change because we are going to change it from level to level. That's perfectly okay. We can leave the optional arguments out. We don't need those for this level. When I put that in, that will give me an answer of 18. So that's one way you can solve this level, is with an XLOOKUP function. I'm going to put this function right here so we can see it. Now, another way you could solve this, because we are dealing with a sequence of numbers from 1 to the n, we can also use the index function. And what the index function does is it says, bring back the value that is in this position in our range. And because we're only dealing with a single row, we only need to deal with one position. So the way to use this is you highlight your range of data, just like that, from 1 to 25 again. And then the position that we want is going to be the player number. So you see here the player number is 1. We're going to work with the first position, which is right there. And that will also get us our answer of 18. So I'm going to, once again, put that up here so that you can see. Now with the index one, we don't have to do any absolute referencing. We don't have to put any fixing, any dollar signs in, because we're not dealing with the headers. We're not dealing with anything that we want to stay absolutely fixed. So I can very easily copy that and paste that all the way down through the rest of that level. So there's how you answer the 7 levels in the junior varsity case here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the bonus questions that we've got. So bonus question 1, ignoring the example, what is the most common guess for all players across all games in level 1? Now this is a statistical measure, something you may remember from a statistics class. You've got your mean, your median, which is the middle value, and your mode. And that mode is the most common value. And Excel has those built in as functions as well. So I'm going to simply just do the mode. And that's going to give me the most common number in this entire range of level 1 answers. There we go. Bonus 2, ignoring the example, how many guesses in level 2 were below the average guess? Average across all 20 games, not an average per game, from all players across games 21 to 40. So there's 2 things we need to do here. First, we need to figure out what that average guess was. And then second, we need to figure out how many guesses were below that average guess. So let me work over here next to this question. And just like we saw with sum, min, max, mode, we could do average. And we're going to average all of the guesses in level 2. And let's see what that average is. We're going to get an average of 43.666. So basically, any guess that is 43 or below, we want to count it. Now we can once again do another COUNTIF statement. Now this one's going to be a little bit weird because we are including inequalities. And the way that these are inputted into a COUNTIF statement is a little bit odd. So follow along with me on this. So for the COUNTIF, we're going to do the same range. We're going to do level 2. So let me highlight all of the answers for level 2. And I want to find all the answers which were less than that 43.686. So the way to do that is we need to enter in the criteria, but we need to enter it in as a string, or the inequality symbol needs to go in as a string. And what I mean is that it needs to go within quotes. So within the double quotes, I'm going to put the less than symbol here. After the less than symbol, put and, because we're working with a string here. So I want anything less than this 43.686. Now when I type it in this way, it's going to give me our answer for this bonus. Bonus 3, ignoring the examples, how many of player 1's guesses in level 4 were correct? Now we worked with an earlier level. Oh, that was level 4. Oh, okay. So in level 4, we already figured out which guesses were correct or which guesses were not correct. We've already got the answers. And because we've already labeled the correct answers with 1 and the incorrect answers with 0, I'm just going to sum up these answers together. That's going to tell me how many answers player 1 got correct or incorrect, or in this case, just correct. Ignoring the example, which player had the most correct guesses in level 4? All right, so I'm going to take that same strategy that I did with one of the later levels, where I worked with the data along the side. That was level 7. You see I did that right there. I'm going to do the same thing on level 4. Basically, I'm going to combine that strategy with this formula here to find out how many each player got right. So let me copy and paste these headers across. And basically what I want to do is if this answer equals the correct answer, remember we're going to fix the column, so I'm going to put a $sign before the letter G, then give me a score of 1, otherwise give me a score of 0. The blue square, that can move freely. We want it to move freely because we're going to move to the right and we're going to move down. But the red square, we only want to move down. All right. So let me drag this over. This is doing the same thing as copying and pasting. So here we got a bunch of 0s and 1s in there. So let's see here. Oh yeah, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12. Yeah, all of the last answers are matching. And let me go ahead and do it for all of the games in this level. So now we got our 0s and 1s. Let me do the highlight again so that you can see them there. In yellow. There we go. Beautiful. Now, let me just check the instructions because there's two things I want to look. First, which player had the most correct guesses? So we want to know the one player that had the most. And then it also says ignoring the example. This is very important in Excel Esports. Sometimes people, like myself, accidentally include the example. So we want to find out the total sum for each of these columns. So I'm just basically going to, once again, use my sum function, copy that, paste that across, and let's see what our largest value is. Now, if you've set up your Excel status bar, you can set it up to show you a bunch of statistics related to the numbers. So mine shows the average, the count, the minimum, and the maximum. So here I could see the maximum is 13, and I can see that 13 is right there. That is player 19. So I'm going to go ahead and copy player 19's number and paste it in for bonus 4. Final bonus. Ignoring the example, what is the most number of correct guesses for a single game in level 5? All right. Well, I think actually we could do just about the same thing that we did for level 4. And in fact, if I did my references correctly and the table is laid out the same, data is labeled out the same, it is, I can very easily just copy this whole thing, make sure I get the right cell, and paste it in. Now you saw my numbers change, but the numbers change the way I wanted to. Let's check the formula. We're comparing this cell with that cell. That's exactly what I want. And we're looking for what is the most number of correct guesses for a single game. Now a single game is by the row, right? So I'm going to sum up all of the numbers within a single row. Just like that. You can drag that down with a fill handle in there. Once again, I'm going to check my status bar. I can see the max is 25. This game. Everyone got the answer correct. That is awesome. I'm going to go ahead and paste in 25. And that is how you solve the junior varsity case for this case. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you got something out of it. And I hope you continue building your skills as an Excel esports competitor. Goodbye.